Good evening students and welcome back to Global Online Platform. This is Chandni Swarnikar and today we are going to cover previous year questions and this is our third lecture on this full revision series. You can get my lectures at 9 PM on a daily basis. बट वीडियो में आगे बढ़ने से पहले मैं आपको बता देती हूँ दिसंबर एग्जाम में जेआरएफ लेने के लिए स्मार्ट प्रिपरेशन करना होगा। उसके लिए ग्लोबल ऑनलाइन ने आपके लिए लेकर आया है इंग्लिश लिटरेचर का कंप्लीट कोर्स, जिसमें आपको वीडियो लेक्चर्स मिलेंगे, जिसमें शॉर्ट एंड स्मार्ट ट्रिक के साथ आपके सारे कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर हो जाएंगे। इसके साथ ही आपको फुल सिलेबस नोट्स जो है पीडीएफ फॉर्मेट में अवेल कराया जाएगा, जिसे आप अपने मोबाइल लैपटॉप में डाउनलोड करके आराम से पढ़ सकते हो। इसके साथ आपको मॉक टेस्ट मिलेंगे, जिसे एज इट इज क्वेश्चन एग्जाम में पूछे जाते हैं। मॉक टेस्ट आपके फाइनल प्रिपरेशन में बहुत हेल्प करता है, तो गिवन कॉन्टैक्ट नंबर पे कॉन्टैक्ट करके आप इसे ज्वाइन कर सकते हो। और सबसे अच्छी बात इस कोर्स की है दैट यू गोइंग टू गेट कंप्लीट पेपर 1 कोर्स फॉर फ्री, सो यू आर सेविंग 3600 रुपीज़ है। ओके, नाउ फ्री वीडियोस के एक्सेस के लिए ग्लोबल ऑनलाइन ऐप को आप फटाफट डाउनलोड कर सकते हो। सोर्स सेक्शन में जाओगे, आपको सारे कोर्सेज की जानकारी यहाँ से मिल जाएगी। सर्च बार में जा कर के सारे जो है डायरेक्टली कोर्स का नाम लिखोगे तो कोर्स का ओवरव्यू आपके सामने आ जाएगा। कोर्स की ड्यूरेशन, इसकी फीस, हर चीज़ जो है आपको पता चल जाएगी। कंटेंट सेक्शन पे क्लिक करते हो तो आपको यूनिट वाइज जो है फोल्डर अवेलेबल मिलेंगे। हर एक यूनिट में थ्योरी, लेक्चर्स, इवैल्यूएशन, नोट्स, मॉक टेस्ट एंड एमसीक्यूज आपको मिलेंगे। इसके अलावा आपको कुछ भी पढ़ने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। इसके साथ अगर आप ग्लोबल ऑनलाइन पेड कोर्स को ज्वाइन करते हो तो आपको व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप में भी ऐड किया जाएगा, जहाँ पे हर एक सेशन की पीडीएफ आप लोगों के साथ में प्रोवाइड करवाई जाएगी। ओके, नाउ मूविंग ऑन। Okay, so let's cover the first question for today. Okay, so the first question is, let me write it down. Okay, which three of the following poets, this is poets, figure in William Dunbar's Lemon for the Macaws? Okay, so the question is asking about William Dunbar's Lemon for the Macaws, and the question is asking about three poets that actually figured in William Dunbar's Lemon for the Macaws. So you have to answer that. But before that, I must tell you about Lemon for the Macaws, that it has another name as well. I that inhale Wes and gladness. Okay, this is another title, and that is also known as the Lemon for the Macaries or Lemon for the Macaws. Right now, it also repeat a refrain that actually Latin phrase, but it means fear of death troubles me. So after every fourth line it repeats the refrain that says fear of death troubles me, and it includes several writers. For example, it includes Geoffrey Chaucer, John Gower, Robert Henryson, but it does not include William Langland. You must remember that. But like behalf of that, we'll consider John Barber. Okay, John Barber. So A, B and C will be our answer, our correct answer. Okay, moving on. Second question. In Paradise Lost, Milton invokes his heavenly muse Urania at the beginning of which two books? The question is asking about, of course, Paradise Lost, written by Milton, and the question is asking about muse Urania, and it's also talking about in which two books, at the beginning of which two books it invokes. Okay, so you have to answer. The options are book 1, book 4, book 9 or book 7. So the correct answer is in book 1 and in book 7 it invokes. Okay, so A and D will be our correct answer. Okay, moving on. Now, often did Richard Steele's Tatler appear every week, and how many issues of Tatler 1 total were published? The question is asking, of course, we have already discussed Richard Steele's Tatler earlier in our lecture, but still the question is different from that questions we have to deal it. So now, often did Richard Steele's Tatler appear every week? Every week it appears. Okay, and how many issues of Tatler 1 total were published? So the options are, first, 2 times a week 171 issues, or once a week 151 issues, 3 times a week 271 issues, or 3 times a week 26 issues. So it is basically published 3 times a week, and it has 271 issues. Okay, so third one is the correct answer. Which one? Third one is the correct answer. Moving on. Let's read another question. Which one of the following novels by Kingsley MS represents its protagonist as an angry young man? I hope you all know that the characteristic of angry young man, what it means. Now, what it means. Now the options are I Like It Here, Lucky Jim, The Biographer's Mistake, or The Great Man. The question is asking about where, like for the first time, Kingsley MS represents his protagonist as an angry young man. So the answer is Lucky Jim. Okay, and other facts about Lucky Jim is it was published in 1954 and first published by Victor Gollancz. Okay, Victor Gollancz. Okay, so the second one is the correct answer. Moving on. In the UNESCO definition, a pamphlet, okay, so according to the UNESCO definition, the question is asking about a pamphlet is an unbound publication that is not a periodical and contains. The question is saying, according to the UNESCO definition, that a pamphlet is unbound publication and it is not periodical and it contains what? Basically it is talking about pages. Okay, so the options are no fewer than 5 and no more than 48 pages, no fewer than 10 and no more than 68 pages, or no fewer than 15 and no more than 64 pages, or the last one, no fewer than 20 and no more than 80 pages. So the correct answer is no fewer than 5 and no more than 48 pages. Okay, so it a pamphlet contains no fewer than 5 and no more than 48 pages. So the first one is the correct answer. Right? Moving on. Okay, so the next question is, which two names from R.M. Ballantyne's Carole Island are repeated in William Golding's reworking of the same text as Lord of the Flies? Okay, so the question is asking about, it is relating to works, and the question is asking about the repeated characters or repeated names. Okay, so you have to answer that. Now, before discussing the options, we'll consider R.M. Ballantyne's work. Okay, so R.M. Ballantyne wrote Carole Island, and it has the full title A Tale of the Pacific Ocean. Okay, the Pacific Ocean. Wait a minute. Okay, so Carole Island, A Tale of the Pacific Ocean, and it was published in 1857. So you need to remember all these facts related to this particular work. Okay, now let's cover the options. The first option is Ralph, second Roger, third Jack or Simon. So which are the characters or the names are being repeated? Okay, so I must tell you that Ralph and Jack, these are the two names that is repeated in the Lord of the Flies and of course in Carole Island. Okay, so Ralph and Jack, so A and C. Okay, this is going to be our answer. Moving on. Which one of William Makepeace Thackeray's novel has the following as the closing sentence? Okay, so it's talking about closing sentence of which work? William Makepeace Thackeray's novel. And the closing line is, which of us, I happy in this world of us, has his desire or having it is satisfied? Which of us, I happy in this world of us, has his desire or having it is satisfied? You have to answer that, in which novel this closing line William Makepeace Thackeray has written. Okay, so the options are The Luck of Barry Lyndon, second Pendennis, third Vanity Fair, or The History of Henry Esmond. So the correct answer is Vanity Fair, where this closing line you can see. Okay, so it was published in 1848 and the story basically follows the lives of Becky Sharp, Becky Sharp is the character, and one more character are there, that is Emilia Sedley. Okay, you need to, yeah. So Vanity Fair is the correct answer, and you need to focus on this, and you can read also, because Vanity Fair is a very important work and it's important for you to cover them. Now let's cover the second question. Match the poet with the opening line of the poem. Match the poet with the opening line of the poem. So these are the poets and these are the opening lines. You have to match it. So let's consider first the opening lines. Okay. So the first one, I cry your mercy, pity, a love. Okay. I cry your mercy, pity, love, a love. Okay. So these are the lines. Like this is a poem basically, and the poem's title is also this one. Now it was written by Keats, John Keats. Okay. Second option is The World is Too Much With Us. It's a poem by Wordsworth. Okay. Wordsworth. O world, O life, O time. These are the lines from a poem, A Lament, that was written by P.B. Shelley. So P.B. Shelley, we have already matched three of them. The last one is When True Love Burns, Desire is Love's Pure Flame. Okay, so the title is When True Love Burns, Desire is Love's Pure Flame. Okay, so these are basically, there's a poem Desire, and it is a poem by Coleridge. So from there this line has been taken. Okay, so now you can see that I cry your mercy, pity, love, a love is written by Keats. The World is Too Much With Us is written by Wordsworth. O world, O life, O time was written by P.B. Shelley, and the fourth one, When True Love Burns, Desire is Love's Pure Flame, is written by Coleridge. Okay, so I have already matched it, you can see that. Now moving on, which of the following tales in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales deals with the murder of a child by Jews? Which of the following tales in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales deals with the murder of a child by Jews? So I have already discussed Canterbury Tales. I have already discussed some of the very important tales by the characters or the pilgrims, you can say. So the options are the monk's tale, the second nun's tale, the third prioress's tale, or the fourth one, the shipman's tale. Okay. So the question is asking about a tale where there was a boy who was murdered by Jews. Okay. So let me tell you, the third one is the correct answer, because in Prioress' tale you can see the whole story about a child who was murdered, who was being murdered by Jews. Okay. So the third one is the correct answer. Moving on. Which two of the following novels belong to the Victorian age in English literature? Which two of the following novels belonged to the Victorian age in English literature? Okay, so you have to find out that. Like, let's cover the options. We have to know the writers first, then we can consider whether it belongs to Victorian age or not. So Pendennis basically is a work by William Makepeace Thackeray. So of course it's a Victorian writer. The Way of All Flesh was written by whom? The Way of All Flesh written by Samuel Butler. Okay, so it's a modern writer, so of course we cannot consider that. Then the Battle of the Books was written by, I think, Jonathan Swift. So it's also not from Victorian age. And the Barchester Towers was written by Anthony Trollope. Okay, Anthony Trollope. So it actually belongs to the Victorian age. So we can see here that Pendennis and Barchester Towers belongs to Victorian age. Okay, so A and D will be our correct answer. Right? Moving on. Which one of the following titles of Robert Browning's works means to distort in the open air to amuse oneself at random? Which one of the following titles of Robert Browning's work means to distort in the open air to amuse oneself at random? So the first option is Jocoseria, then second Andrea del Sarto, Apt Vulgar, or fourth Asolando. Okay, so these are the works written by Robert Browning, of course, but you have to consider those work or that work that actually distort in the open air to amuse oneself at random. So see, it's a 1883 work. Okay, Then it's a poem and it was written in 1885. Then Abt Vogler, basically it's a dramatic monologue, okay, and it was published in 1864. And at the end, Esselando basically is the correct answer, where it means to resort in the open air to amuse oneself at random, written by Robert Browning. So the fourth one is the correct answer. Moving on, match the characters with the play. So these are the characters and these are the play, and of course it was written by William Shakespeare. And like when you read this question, now you need to know that Shakespeare's characters are also very important, because so many times they'll give you characters, of course, like that they'll give you characters and they'll give you the works and you have to match them. So need to know that. So see, the characters are Donalbain, Claudio, Nerissa and Goneril, and the plays are King Lear, Macbeth, Merchant of Venice and Measure for Measure. So Donalbain is a character in which play? Donalbain is a character in Macbeth play, okay? So Macbeth. Let me write it here, Macbeth. Then Claudia. So do focus on the characters. Claudia is a character in Measure for Measure. Measure for Measure. Okay. Nerissa is the character from Merchant in Venice, the third one. Merchant of Venice. Right? Then Goneril. Goneril, of course, is a character in King Lear, right? So we have already matched it. Donalbain with Macbeth, Claudio with Measure for Measure, Nerissa with Merchant of Venice, and Goneril with King Lear. Okay, so we can see here. Moving on. Okay, so the next question is, which of the following plays by Ben Jonson ends with a performance of a puppet play in imitation of Marlowe's Hero and Leander? Okay, so there was a puppet play in the end of one of Ben Jonson play, and that was an imitation of Marlowe's Hero and Leander, and you have to find out the play. Okay, so the options are The Alchemist, 2. Volpone, 3rd, Bartholomew Fair, or 4th, Every Man in His Humour. From here you can also see that these are the works by Ben Jonson. You do not need to cover from other source. You can see here that these are the works by Ben Jonson. You can memorize it, okay, altogether. See, now the correct answer we have to find out, whether it's The Alchemist, Volpone, Bartholomew Fair, or Every Man in His Humour. The correct answer is Bartholomew Fair. Okay, so where at the end of the play, with the performance of a puppet play, of course, in imitation of Marlowe's Hero and Leander. And other facts related to that is Jacobean play comedy hai. It's a Jacobean comedy and in 5 acts. Okay, 5 acts. Now, other thing is, it was staged in 1614 at the Hope Theatre. At the Hope Theatre by the Lady Elizabeth's Men's Company. Of course, you must have heard about him, about the theatre company, Lady Elizabeth's Men's Company. Okay, so the correct answer is Bartholomew Fair. Moving on. Which 2 of the following plays were written by Thomas Heywood? Which 2 of the following plays were written by Thomas Heywood? So the options are the play called The 4 PP, the second option, the play of the weather, the Spanish tragedy, and the Goldberg. Of course, Goldberg is a work I hope you all know. It's a work by Thomas Norton and Thomas Sequel. Okay, Norton and, it sounds like naughty. Okay, Thomas Norton and Sequel. Okay, so we cannot consider that, of course, it's excluded. Now, 2 of them. The Spanish tragedy was written by Thomas Kidd. So, these 2 works are written by Thomas Heywood. Okay, the question is asking about 2 of the following plays. So, these are the 2 plays. 1, A and B is the correct answer. Right? Moving on. Who among the following wrote Mazeppa, a long narrative poem about a 17th century military leader of Ukraine? So the question itself talking about Mazeppa, it's a long narrative poem, the whole facts related to the particular work. The question is itself declaring. So Mazeppa, a long narrative poem about a 17th century military leader of Ukraine. So who wrote it? Okay. So the options are William Cowper, second Lord Byron, third P.B. Shelley, and the fourth one is S.T. Coleridge. Okay. So you have to tell me the answer. So the answer is Lord Byron. And other facts related to Mazeppa itself is very self-explanatory, because you can read the question and you can answer that. Okay, so it was written by Lord Byron, and these are of course romantic poets, romantic writers, and you have to consider all the romantic writers because it's very important for you to cover them, all of them. Okay, moving on. Match list 1 to list 2. Okay, so list 1 consider the critics, and the list 2 consider the works. So Horace, John Dryden, Samuel Daniel, and Ben Jonson. The second, A Defense of Rhyme, Timber of Rhyme, Ars Poetica, and of Dramatic Poesy. So Horace basically will go with Ars Poetica, so it's poetic, third. Then John Dryden wrote of dramatic poesy. Okay, so it will go with the fourth one. Okay, so the Samuel Daniel wrote A Defense of Rhyme. Okay, so it will go with the first option. And Ben Jonson with Timber, Timber or Discoveries. The full title, Discoveries. Okay, so it will go with the second one. Okay, so we have matched all four of them. So Horace with Ars Poetic, and Ben Jonson with Of Dramatic Poesy, Samuel Daniel with A Defense of Rhyme, and Ben Jonson with Timber or Discoveries. Okay, now moving on to question number 71. So which one of the following statement is appropriately true of Harold Pinter's plays? So I hope you know about Harold Pinter's play. So let me consider the options first, then we'll understand which one is the correct answer. The first option is menace is in the air and it leads to bloody violence. Second, menace is in the air and it is realized through the female characters. Third, menace is in the air but it is not pinned down or explained. Menace is in the air and anarchy follows in a systematic manner. Okay, so which one is the correct answer? So see, when you read Harold Pinter's play, you'll understand they do not mention, do not pin down, do not explain menace. Okay, so menace is in the air but it is not pinned down or explained. So the third one is the correct answer. Which one? The third one is the correct answer. Moving on. Next question. Which of the following poems by Philip Larkin deals with the trauma of a rape victim who says, "Even so distant I can taste the grief"? The line is, "Even so distant I can taste the grief." The question is asking about which of the following poems consider this line and actually deals with the trauma of a rape victim who says these lines. Okay, so you have to name it. Now the options are Deceptions, second Faith Healing, third Sad Steps, and Wild Oats. Okay, so you have to tell me the correct answer. Now before that I must tell you, Philip Larkin wrote these works. You need to remember that, because when you will read postmodern writers, when you consider that, you will understand that Philip Larkin is a very important writer. Okay, so you have to know all the works of Philip Larkin, also the themes and the basic idea of this works. Okay, so the Deceptions actually deals with the trauma of a rape victim who says this line. So the first one is the correct answer, which is Deception. Okay, moving on. Match list 1 and list 2. So these are the essayists and these are the essays. You have to match them. So I hope you all will be able to correct them and match it properly. Okay, so the first one is George Orwell, second Michael de Montaigne, C. Charles Lamb, fourth Jonathan Swift, and these are the essays on the artificial comedy of the last century, Why I Write, A Modest Proposal, or On the Cannibals. Okay. So, on the artificial comedy of the last century, who wrote this? Charles Lamb wrote this. Okay, Charles. I just need to write it. Charles. Okay. Why I Write. Who wrote this one? Why I Write. George Orwell. I'll write here Orwell. A Modest Proposal. I hope you all know. It's very easy to identify. Jonathan Swift. Swift wrote this. Okay, where he was actually proposing. It was not the modest proposal. It was a kind of a satire. On the Cannibals, of course, at the end we'll go with Mikhail. Okay, so we have answered them. Now you can see here, George Orwell wrote what? Why I Write. Mikhail de Montaigne wrote On the Cannibals. Charles Lamb wrote On the Artificial Comedy of the Last Century, and Jonathan Swift wrote A Modest Proposal. Right? Moving on. Here, match list 1 to list 2. These are the authors and these are the works. So, John Keats, William Wordsworth, P.B. Shelley, William Blake, and the works are Alistair, Songs of Experience, Comic, or The Excursion. Right? So, Alistair. Who wrote Alistair? Who wrote Alistair? P.B. Shelley. Okay? Shelley. Right? Songs of Experience. Who wrote this? William Blake. Then Comic. Who wrote Comic? Keats. John Keats. And then Excursion. Who wrote Excursion? Of course, William Wordsworth. At the end, we only left with this writer. So, Wordsworth. Alistair wrote, written by Shelley. Songs of Experience was written by Blake. Of course. Comic was written by Keats, and the Excursion will go with the Wordsworth. Okay. So, we have now the correct answer. Okay. So who among the following believe that rhyme is not an integral part of poetry? Have to answer that. Who among the following believe that rhyme is not an integral part of poetry? So the options are William Wordsworth, Horace, Samuel Daniel, or Philip Sidney. You have to consider two of them. Okay. So let's have some time and think about it. Okay, so who will be the one who said or believed that rhyme is not an integral part of poetry? So the correct answer is Horace and Philip Sidney. These two writers believed that rhyme is not an integral part of poetry. Okay, so B and D will be the correct answer. Moving on. Who said of the blank verse, quoting an unnamed critic, that it is verse only to the eye? Okay. Who said of the blank verse, quoting an unnamed critic, that it is verse only to eye, adding further that it has neither the easiness of prose nor the melody of numbers? Who said these lines to or about prose? So the options are John Dryden, Alexander Pope, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, or Samuel Johnson. Who said this? So the correct answer is Samuel Johnson, who said that prose is verse only to the eye, has neither the easiness of prose nor the melody of numbers. Okay, so it's basically talking about the blank verse. Wait a minute. It's talking about the blank verse. Okay, and said that it is verse only to the eye, adding further that it has neither the easiness of prose nor the melody of numbers. Who said this? Samuel Johnson. Moving on. Which two of the following are the titles of the sections in Thomas D. Quincy's The English Male Coach? Okay, so you have to consider these options. You have to answer two of them. Which two of the following are the titles of the sections in Thomas D. Quincy's The English Male Coach? The options are The Glory of Mobility, The Vision of Sudden Death, The Glory of Motion, The Vision of Unexpected Truth. Which two of them? So the second one and the third one, the vision of sudden death and the glory of motion, actually are the titles of the sections in Thomas D. Quincy's The English Male Coach. Okay, so B and C. Okay, moving on. Arrange the following in the chronological order of publication. So you have to know the publishing year for the first time. Now we have already discussed different questions. Now we are going to cover the chronological questions. So you have to know the publishing year. So the first one is Chrome Yellow. It was published in 1921. Sons and Lovers, it was published in 13. Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf was published in 1925. Okay, and Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man was actually published in 1916. So Sons and Lovers will be at the first, B, then D, then A, and then C. Here. Sons and Lovers 1913, 1916, 1921 and 1925, right? So this is our correct answer, right? Moving on. Which two of the following oppositions are best evoked by Hamlet's utterance, to be or not to be? Okay, so you have to answer which two of the following oppositions are best evoked by Hamlet's utterance, to be or not to be. So the options are between life and death, between action and emotion, between affirmation and confirmation, or between doing and abstaining from doing. So whenever we talk about Hamlet, we have to consider he was very confused whether to do or not, because he was very much aware of the fact that his uncle murdered his father. Even though he was contemplating, he was abstaining from doing, or he was very confused to do or not to do. Okay, so here he was confused between life and death, and he was confused between doing and abstaining from doing. So these two will be our correct answer, A and D. Okay, between life and death and between doing and abstaining from doing, right? Moving on. Again, which two texts among the following are linked to literary feminism? Which two texts among the following are linked to literary feminism? See, A Small Place was written by Jamaica. It's not Jamai, it's Jamaica Kincaid. Okay. The Yellow Paper was written by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Then Emma was of course written by Austen. And A Room of One's Own was written by whom? This one was written by Virginia Woolf. Okay. So of course A Room of One's Own is a literary feminism work. So we'll consider the fourth one. And The Yellow Paper. Whenever you have time to read The Yellow Paper, you must read it. It was written by Charlotte Perkins Gilman and consider so many literary feminism concepts that you must read. So B and D actually linked to literary feminism. So B and D will be our correct answers. Now moving on. Who makes the following speech in Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot? There are two main characters, Estragon and Vladimir here. And Waiting for Godot, they are waiting for Godot. Okay, so the lines are astride of a grave and a difficult birth. Down in the hall, lingeringly, the grave digger puts on the forceps. Astride of a grave and a difficult birth, down in the hole, lingeringly, the grave diggers puts on the forceps. Who said these lines? You have to answer that. The options are Estragon, second the Lucky, third the Vladimir, or the Pozo. So basically Vladimir gave this speech in Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. The correct answer is Vladimir. Okay, moving on. Which two poems in the following list are examples of dramatic monologue? Okay, which two poems in the following list are examples of dramatic monologue? So, Alfred Tennyson's Ulysses, whether Philip Larkin's Church Going, or Carol Ann Duffy's Medusa, or Catherine Phillips' A Married State? Which two poems? These all are poems, but dramatic monologue you can see in Ulysses and in Medusa. So A and C will be our correct answer. Now you have to focus here that Ulysses was written by Alfred Tennyson. That is given here, so you don't need to take from some other source. You can remember this. Okay. Moving on. Arrange the following plays in the chronological order of publication. Arrange the following plays in the chronological order of publication. So, All for Love was written by Dryden and it was published in 1677. Venice Preserved was written by Thomas Otway and it was published in 1682. So the third is The School for Scandal. School for Scandal was written by R.B. Sheridan and it was published in 1777. Okay. And The Country Wife, at the end, The Country Wife was written by William Wycherley and it was published in 1675. So you can see the chronology, of course. So D will come first, then A, then B, and then C. So this is going to be our correct answer. Okay. So you have to know the writers as well. I have already explained that to you. Moving on. Okay, so the last question. As mentioned, wait a minute. As mentioned in My First Acquaintance with Poets, which poet does William Hazlitt describe as the only person I ever knew who answered the idea of a man of genius? Okay. As mentioned in My First Acquaintance with Poets, which poet does William Hazlitt describe as the only person I ever knew who answered the idea of a man of genius? I have already discussed My First Acquaintance with Poets written by William Hazlitt, and but the question is different here, so you have to answer that William Hazlitt described somebody as only person I ever knew who answered the idea of a man of genius. So you have to tell me the correct answer. So the options are Coleridge, okay, then William Wordsworth, Lord Byron, and P.B. Shelley. So the correct answer, I have already told you, it considered two writers, William Wordsworth and S.T. Coleridge, and we have discussed Wordsworth earlier. So the correct answer here is Coleridge. Okay. So according to William Hazlitt, only person he ever knew who answered the idea of a man of genius was Coleridge. Okay. So the correct answer will be Coleridge. Now we have completed today's lecture. We'll meet in the next lecture. Thank you so much. We are going to cover some of the very important PYQs in upcoming lectures. So wait for that, and all the very best. Keep on revising.